Hi, and welcome back. This is Blaine Bartlett. You're listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. And I'm excited today about the guest that we're going to be having for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a gentleman that I've known for well over 20 years. And I love this guy. I mean, he's amazing. He has done some phenomenal things with the organization that I'm going to be talking about, and in the industry sector that I'm going to be actually referencing, which is the second reason I'm really excited to have Lee Angus with me. The area of focus that his organization plays in is healthcare, and particularly given what we have on the the horizon today and what we're deep in the middle of, I can't think of a more relevant topic to speak to, both in terms of the consumer side as a patient, but also on the delivery side as the docs and the administrators of hospital systems and that sort of thing, which is really where Lee's firm works. Lee Angus is the president and a co-founder of an organization called MEDI Leadership. MEDI, and they are a wholly owned subsidiary of Navis Healthcare, which is one of the larger healthcare organizations. And I say healthcare organizations, they provide services, organizational development services to healthcare systems, particularly in this country, but they also have got a little bit broader footprint than that. So we'll get into some biographical background as the conversation unfolds here, but I want to just welcome Lee Angus, my good friend and actually a colleague. So Lee, welcome.
Thank you, Blaine. It's always a privilege to be with you, to visit with you.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know what your schedule's like, and it's an honor to have you here. Like I said, I've known you for 20 some odd years, and I remember sitting in a living room with you when MEDI was co-founded.
Yep.
By you and a couple of your brother and a couple of other folks that kind of came into play here. And you are now the president of this organization, and you have done some amazing things with it. It is one of, in my estimation, I think it is probably the most well-recognized coaching, executive development firm that's working in the healthcare space right now. So a couple of things. First of all of my guests, and we start off with this question: when you hear the soul of business, just that phrase, what does that evoke for you, both personally, but also in the healthcare environment today?
Personally, it invokes why I love to do what I do. And that's important to me. I think leaders being able to capture the heart and soul of someone around something that is important to them and that aligns with their vision and their mission, I think that's key. And personally, when I listen to you ask that question, it invokes just joy for me. And I love to collaborate with leaders who are facing some incredible challenges in an already incredible and increasingly complex world. And being able to collaborate with them, help them succeed, help them build their own strengths, leverage existing strengths. It's a lot of fun. It's a privilege. And so to me personally, that's the soul of business. I often, and I think you and I visited maybe a little bit about this, but when I meet with a potential new client, I go like this. We're on a quest to figure out if this is going to be fun or if this is going to be brain trauma, because life's too short for brain trauma. And let's figure that out quickly so that we can, and if it's fun, great, let's collaborate. If it's brain trauma, there's plenty of other people to collaborate with. And that, I just believe that. I think that's part of success. I think that's part of the joy of business. I think that's part of the soul of business when I think about it.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And we've had conversations about this. And the idea here of what does the future hold? Why would I engage you and or MEDI as a physician or as a hospital administrator in the first place? And partly it has to do with my desire to see a future state different than what I'm currently experiencing. And it's not necessarily because something's broken right now, but I just want to, I want to have things be quote unquote better in some way, shape, or form. And I
Yeah.
don't have to be broken in order to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do people come to MEDI? Yeah,
Mm,
these large systems, because you work with some of the largest hospital systems
we
and
do.
healthcare systems, in the country.
We do. It's an interesting question. I think we're beginning to be more recognized just through broad marketing, and recognition is coming out. People find us through the social networking connections. Historically, it has been through relationships, relationships of trust with leaders that are in place, that have been in a place, and it's leveraging that trusted relationship where someone says, a leader says either, hey, I am in a position where I need thought partners. You know better than I do, I think, Blaine, how lonely a CEO position can be, and how, providing a forum where that leader can have thought partners in a space where the only agenda at play is her or his success. Um, so through those relationships, they seek that. Through our Navis parent company, they are swinging for the fences in terms of redesigning how healthcare operates in this country. And it's pretty amazing to watch the drastic changes they're bringing to play, technology and outstanding people and improved processes that make it easier for customers, for patients, for providers, for payers to navigate that whole world. And so sometimes our clients come to us through those connections, through Navis. And a lot of it is, over the years, we've built trusted relationships with leaders that have moved around the country, the industry, and we get the privilege of joining with them as they enter a new organization. It's an incredibly complex world, and leaders have to look at this ambiguous future in front of them and say, how do I want to show up here? How does my organization play here? What can I create? What opportunities can I seize? What impact can I have? And that's probably some of the richest stuff that leaders can do. And it's lonely. So to have really outstanding people as your coach, kind of looking at the situation with you. And I say that hopefully not in a boastful way, but I think, Blaine, the pool of people that we're fortunate enough to operate with, and it's an incredibly humbling thing. These people have incredible experience, and then they have the disposition of a coach, of a thought partner, of not someone that's going to come in and tell you need to do it this way, but someone that might speak truth to you in a way that others may not be willing to or able to, and help you see where perhaps you can grow, but also partner with you at looking at that future and how to navigate that ambiguity. So I don't know, does that get close to answering your
Oh, it
question?
absolutely. I mean, it really does. You bring up a couple of things. One is, this notion that, a world that moves us is one that we imagine. It's not the ones that we actually are living in. So, my experience in coaching, in the 40 years or so that I've been doing it, is that if we can tap into that possibility, what's that future? Just imagine what it could be like, and then have that kind of be the focal point as we move forward. So I mean, I love the coaches that you have brought into the MEDI environment, your core group, and as well as the peripheral secondary group of coaches that MEDI has. As you mentioned, I think it's some of the most phenomenally gifted and professional coaches I've ever had the, actually pleasure of working with. Sharp, intelligent, bright, selfless. And that kind of speaks to, the healthcare ethos to begin with, first
True.
do no harm. I mean,
True.
if I go back to that, um, you talk about the complexity of the healthcare system, and we've got basically well, there's a number of constituencies that are continuously in play. There's the patient, there's the obviously there's the administration, there's the docs, there's the nurses, and then you've got the other side of it, which is the payers, the insurance organizations, all of that stuff. In the coaching work that your folks do and that MEDI does, can you describe a little bit how you keep connection to the soul of
Yeah.
healthcare with those oftentimes competing constituencies?
Yeah, I think that is the core. I oftentimes, in fact, I think, Blaine, in yours and my past experience, we had the privilege of coaching together a leader, and you may recall me giving some feedback to her that her leadership style had a strongly managerial flavor. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember
And it's
exactly where we
been,
were when that conversation took place.
yeah, and it's fascinating to see the difference. So managers, one of the things I've learned from you, my favorite definition of leadership, and because it's the simplest, but I think it's also very, very insightful and direct: co-creating coordinated movement.
Mhm.
And so leaders peer into that ambiguous future or this incredibly complex world that they need to navigate, and they co-create coordinated movement. Managers drive movement. I think what speaks to the soul of business is a leader outlining a mission and a vision that is compelling to the people that she or he leads, and articulates values that will drive the journey towards that future. And I remember through my brother, Dave Angus, I got to know a little bit. I got exposed to Warren Bennis, who prolific researcher, author, highly respected authority on leadership. And I remember him speaking of mission. In fact, I'm sure you recall his book, Organizing Genius, Secrets of Creative Collaboration. He talks about a leader's role is to capture the genius within the person, and also to capture the genius within the group, or set the group up such that the genius can emerge. And that's an intriguing thought to me, because we've all met people that say, well, if there's a genius in there, I'm not sure I'm seeing it yet. But most people that our clients work with are incredibly bright, incredibly talented. And a leader's opportunity is to lay out a vision of the future that is so compelling that they want to create, that people say, I am all in. I'm not just in for a payday. I'm not just in for keeping busy or a job. I'm in heart and soul.
Mhm.
And so I think a key part of the soul of business is a leader's ability to co-create coordinated movement towards a compelling future, to achieve an incredibly compelling mission that says, yeah, I want to be part of that. I want to show up in the world that way. And so I think that's an important part of it. Does that resonate?
Oh, it absolutely does. And, when I was wrestling with that definition of leadership, co-creating coordinated movement, I actually came up with it from the perspective of, that emerging genius, notion. And I knew Warren as you did, not well, but the idea here that there is an emerging genius. And this is where, if I think about imagination, imagination is kind of at the threshold of spirit. Yeah, it's the gateway into that genius that spirit actually represents. And if I can find a way to bring that out, then how do I co-create, which is evocation. It's the invitation to have others join with me, and ownership actually transfers at that point. And when that ownership is transferred, emotional engagement, by definition, takes off.
Happens.
You
And
we're
there is no way to manage to that level of motivation or drive in a person. I don't
no,
believe. I think
no,
that's the heart of leadership right there.
spot on. Yeah, management is an external process. Leadership is an internal process. And you and I both talk about heads up and heads down,
Yep.
time in organizations.
Yep.
A leader needs to take time to get their heads up so that they can actually take a broader picture. And it's in that almost unfocused gaze. And I don't mean unfocused in the sense that I'm not paying attention, but it's not fixated on minutia. It's not fixated on detail. It's opening up possibility, and
Exactly.
that idea of moving possibility into reality. I mean, you work, MEDI works, Navis works in a, as we said, an incredibly complex system, that joy is not a natural part of oftentimes because illness is present almost pervasively in many, many forms. And I
Sure.
want to touch on that when we come back from this break. How do we keep joy in the process?
You
So
bet.
we'll take a real quick break and then we'll be back. So hang on, folks. I want to thank you for listening. I want to also invite you right now to go to blainebartlett.com. And on that site, which is my personal website, you'll see services up on the top menu. I'd like you to click on Leadership Mastermind. Now, why I want you to do that is we have structured a mastermind program that is very unusual and it is very powerful. And by going onto that site and clicking that link, you'll be taken to a landing page that is an invitation to join this mastermind. It's a 52-week long exploration of what it takes to be a highly effective leader in today's fast-changing environment. You won't regret it. And if you've been liking what you've been listening to on these Soul of Business podcasts, how does one become a leader that can keep connection to the soul of business? That's what we look at. That's what we're about in this mastermind program. So again, go to blainebartlett.com and click on the services link. And there you'll find the link to the Leadership Mastermind program. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for listening to this little commercial. And now back to our show. Hi, and welcome back. You're listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. My guest today, Lee Angus, not the CEO, he's the president. I just promoted you, of an organization called MEDI Leadership, one of the most effective executive leadership coaching firms that focuses on the healthcare space. And just before our break, Lee, we were talking about, at least I was talking about, and I introduced it, how we bring joy into the experience of being in the healthcare system. Now that almost seems like an oxymoron.
Sure does.
Yeah, in one sense, because people come in, they're sick, they're scared. That's at the patient level. At the if I'm a doctor or I'm an administrator, I'm continuously dealing with, from an administrative side, the bottom line. It's a tight margin business in many ways, particularly today where elective processes have been sidelined. And the docs and the nurses are dealing with people that they're traumatized. Yeah.
Yes.
So this notion of joy, and I bring joy into this because when I tap into the spirit of things, in my experience, joy is a consequence of being able to have access to the spirit of life, the spirit of living, the spirit of the soul of business. So do you have any thoughts? And I'd be very interested in that. And this is kind of a left field question. But what's the relevancy of joy in the healthcare system and in the work that you do with the clients that you work with?
It's a really good question. I think of it in two lines. One is, I think of all of the providers, those who have dedicated their lives to developing an expertise in a given area of medicine and care. And I fear that currently a lot of the joy is lost. Burnout is high, pressure is high. You'll hear, I got into medicine because I wanted to treat people, not fill out forms and complete, computer screens. And they understand, these are brilliant people. They understand that there's a need, but there is opportunity there to flip it from, you got a broken arm, I'll fix your broken arm, to let's take care of your well-being as a whole. And let's help you. Let me be your partner in your well-being. And part of that is your joy. I think of this story, has been on my mind as we've been talking. Had the privilege of meeting a woman who had been a CEO of a health plan, meaning the insurance payer. And her husband was a brain surgeon, neurosurgeon. Well, he later in life contracted brain cancer, oddly enough. And she shared with me that even with his experience in the system operating and her experience with payers, it was still incredibly challenging to navigate his care, to find where he could reach that care that he needed. And I'm thinking, then what's it like for the Lee Anguses of the world that don't have a clue, or the, John Browns of the world who, or Janet Brown, who they stepped into this world that is incredibly complex. And you've got on one hand, people in their most intimate and vulnerable spaces of life, and incredibly caring people who want to help and serve and make a positive impact. And there's this complexity in between that can block the connection. Mm-hmm. And I think that's both a challenge and the opportunity for our healthcare leaders these days, to try to bring that joy. I think even in some of the most dire circumstances, diagnoses, there can be, I watch these providers who, I don't know if I would call it joy, but there's this sense of fulfillment and mission around helping someone at their most vulnerable that I think may parallel joy in some ways. It's a satisfaction of fulfillment that I think is important. Speaks to that spirit that you touched on earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a real interesting honing in on what I mean by joy. Joy is almost, it's the emotional response in one sense to fulfillment, of this worked well, that sort of thing. I mean, I remember, and you knew my late wife, Pam.
Yeah, Pam.
And when we were navigating, just as you were describing, an incredibly complex healthcare system for her treatment of her cancer. I remember, working with providers. I remember working with, the insurance companies, and there were people in those positions that would remove barriers that were artificially created. It's kind of like, well, yeah, I know this is a quote unquote a regulation, but there's a way to mitigate that. There's a way to work with this, and let me get back to you on that. And the experience as a consumer, or my late wife as a patient, it was tantamount to joy. It's kind of like somebody's got my back. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I feel better about me as a consequence of this interaction with this person, and that process is important. I remember when Pam was in a number of times that she was in ICU, and conversations that she would have with nurses, and how uplifted she felt as a consequence of those conversations. Not that they took care of her illness. I mean, the illness was still there, but there was just this qualitative, and it was qualitative, not quantitative, experience. That was a difference. And to the point, the healthcare, it's not illness treatment, it's wellness. Wellness enhancement.
Yes.
And Yeah.
many leaders are driving in that direction and trying to get there. And that's what's exciting is that leadership creation of the future and creating a culture where you've got people empowered. One thing that comes to mind, Blaine, is core values.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, if I work with a leader or at the top of an organization or somewhere down lower that's struggling with joy or trying to find that soulness or that joy in their work, oftentimes it's an impingement on core values.
Yeah.
And I think I learned and have deep respect for Dr. Charles Sorensen. Charles retired a couple of years from being the CEO of Intermountain Healthcare, highly respected organization in the world. And Charles drove home to me the place that a leader has in, and I think if I remember it correctly, he may not have described it this way, but my takeaway from him was a leader's role is to identify, articulate, and model the core values.
Mhm.
And then what that allows people below the leadership level to do is it provides the guardrails for how we make decisions.
Mhm.
You can either be a leader, which I'll call more of a manager, that says, you will run all of the decisions past me. Or you can be the kind of a leader that sets the culture, sets the tone, sets the mission, sets the values, and then allows people's genius to emerge as they seek to fulfill the mission and align with the values. And I think that's a big part of the soul of business is find either as a leader defining those values or as not the leader, finding the organization where those values are honored and treasured or that you can align with those values. I think joy gets crushed when values are impinged. That's been my observation, at least.
I love that. I haven't heard it put that way, and I also really appreciate you sharing define, articulate, and model. Yeah, just as a meme. Yeah, for leaders to actually organize around. Yeah, because culture is going to get developed. It can't not be developed.
One way or the other.
One way or the other. It's either organically going to emerge without any attention, and then you have to deal with it, or you're going to be mindfully intentional about putting it in place. And you can do that at any point in time in any organization. That mindful attention to what's the culture that's going to support that dream, that ideal that we as an organization aspire to be, and that we as individuals aspire to be.
Agree.
Yeah, I love that. Um, what's on the horizon? I mean, we're in the midst of a pandemic right now, and I'll close off with this question here. I want to be respectful of your time,
Yeah.
but on the horizon, in the midst of this COVID experience that we're all having, and what looks to be a second, and some are saying a third wave coming, just almost like a tidal wave. What's the greatest challenge that from your perspective as an organization coaching these under pressure leaders? What's the greatest challenge that you're facing and that you think they're facing?
Um, I think being in what I'll call a crucible, and a crucible, something that is a refining instrument wherein a mixture, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but my vision of a crucible is something that some raw materials are put in and they are submitted to either pressure or fire or both, heat, but it's rather intense and there's a refining process that takes place. But those crucibles are tiring. So I think one of the biggest challenges I see facing leaders is that persistence, that resilience, that stamina
Yeah.
to keep eyeballs pointed towards the mission and the vision and the values in the midst of life and death pressures and crises. And it's still here. It's, you feel this fatigue that is setting in. So how do you as a leader address that in yourself, and then provide the support that you need to those that you're leading? Um, I think that is one of the biggest challenges that I see leaders in this environment facing right now. And of course, you mentioned before a lot of the elective procedures for some period of time, and it varies depending on where you are in the organization that you're working in. They get stopped, and thus brings incredible financial pressures. And so navigating it is incredibly challenging. Again, I don't think you can manage your way through this. I think you have to lead your way through this. And the only way I know is how can a leader continually remind, this is our mission and these are our values. Let these guide your interactions through these crucible moments. And then let's come together as team to co-create coordinated movement in the direction that we need to. Biggest challenge for us as coaches, probably learning to adapt. You kind of get used to the tools of building trust, and interpersonal connection and face-to-face connection is one of the tools. And so we've had to adapt to, how can we build trusted relationships incredibly fast and incredibly deep without that, through a video connection. And it's different. So we're having to adapt, and we're having to grow through that. It's one might think, in fact, many have told me, I feel so sorry for you, Lee. Your business is discretionary. In times where revenues are cut, your business is going to be hurt. I'm here for you. And has not been the case. If anything, leaders need that outlet more than ever. We've not seen a contraction in our business. During the peak of the pressure and everything shutting down, locking down, leaders paused. So there wasn't a lot of new sales going on, which you wouldn't expect that, because they're focused on what they needed to in that crucible moment. But I think they're seeing the value of having that thought partnership, either with their teams or with themselves as leaders, or with the leaders that work below in their organizations. And so our work has actually increased. And so the challenge for us is adapting to a new delivery mechanism. I'm curious if that resonates with your experience.
Oh, it absolutely does. And I was hoping that you would actually touch on that, because that has been my experience. And the idea of these types of services, and I mean, it is a service that we provide, and it's a resource we provide to our clients, being discretionary. That has never resonated with me in any way, shape, or form, because all that a coaching environment does, all that a coaching engagement does, is opens possibilities for greater improvement. That's all that it's about at the end of the day, in my experience. And to be discretionary about that kind of an investment is crazy. I mean, every journey, when people begin a journey that they've never gone on before, it's far easier to define what's at risk, what I potentially could lose.
True.
And it's much more difficult to identify what I can gain. But at the beginning of that journey, there is never, ever going to be as much promise of gain as there, at any point in time. And it's at the beginning.
There. Yep.
And they're both there. They're both there. And I have to make a decision. And leaders that are making those decisions today are well served to be not doing it by themselves. I mean, co-creating coordinated movement is not just something that's done in the organization. It's something that I do with my life. Who do I bring in as a thought partner? So I want to just acknowledge that, and the whole idea of values, and I'm going to close off on this. It's a lot easier for us to speak about our values than it is to live our values, in my experience. And when there's a lot of pressure, when there's a lot of stuff going on, that becomes absolutely more critical to pay attention to than at any other time. because that's when the values really get challenged. And
True.
the value of values is that it informs decisions, and
Yes.
decisions are what we organize our behavior around. So, what are our values? What are we paying attention to? And are we living them in a way that is generative, that's actually
Yeah,
going to be serving us long term?
indeed.
So, where can people find out more about MEDI and
Uh,
what you're up to?
oh, I love that question. Thank you. We are at medileadership.org. I think you can either put a medi-leadership.org or medileadership.org all together. And you can find ways to reach out to us there.
Great, great. Lee, I want to thank you. You've been listening to Lee Angus talking about the soul of business, and we've been looking at it in through the lens of a healthcare and focus. And Lee, good friend, I love you. I love the work that you're
Thank
doing,
you.
and I am honored to be able to call you a friend, and actually to be able to collaborate and work with you on, on an ongoing basis. It's been a fun journey and a fun ride. You've been listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett, and you can find out more about what I'm up to by going to blainebartlett.com. And there's resources there that you can have access to. There's videos, there's articles, there's a free ebook. As a matter of fact, I'd encourage you to go to the website and download the free copy of Tapping into the Soul of Business. It's an ebook. It's free. It's available to you. And until next time, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next episode.